That being said, before we get into this Russia story, it's a nuanced issue, guys. Obviously, Zach and I are both fervently anti-war, and the fact that Putin is doing some horrible, horrible things right now is worth condemning too. Just because we don't think it's worth going to war over this and literally starting a global conflict does not mean that there's any room for apologism about what Russia's doing. We can give the context for sure, but I think it's important to also make sure that we're condemning war wherever it happens around the globe. There's no excuse to drop bombs. There's no excuse to shell civilians. Ukrainian people were having to sleep in the subway last night instead of their own goddamn beds in their own goddamn homes because, again, bombs are falling. Very scary situation that's totally unexcusable. And I thought it would be a good idea to curate some of the best takes I saw, at least on Twitter, from some anti-imperialist voices that I really trust and look to in these instances. Here's Jeremy Corbyn, someone that has laid out a lot of the context in recent months as to why the current situation is going on as it is in Ukraine with regards to NATO expansion, etc. He says, Russia's shocking invasion of Ukraine will inevitably lead to more fear, misery, and death. It is a frightening escalation of the ongoing crisis. Russia must withdraw its troops and return to diplomacy. If it does not, dark days ahead for Ukraine, Russia, and all of Europe, and I would add all of the world. I think he's 100% on point there. Let's go to another one. Miss Abby Martin coming through with some facts here. She says, Putin just threw a match into a tinderbox. Horrific criminal behavior. No matter what precipitated this, we must push for de-escalation, not war. Solidarity with the Ukrainian people and the anti-war movement in Russia. So once again, a strong anti-imperialist voice, uncompromising in her anti-imperialist values, coming out condemning Putin. Again, it's necessary to do so. Dr. Jill Stein, who I voted for in 2016, war is a racket and a crime against humanity. We must condemn Putin's attack on Ukraine and stand in solidarity with people caught in the crossfire between great powers run by oligarchs and nationalist warmongers. And we need to tell the truth about US/NATO provocations that got us there. So this is 100% accurate. We can do both at once. We can be honest about the context and about the US/NATO provocations that got us to this point. We also must condemn Putin's attack on Ukraine and stand in solidarity with the normal-ass working-class people that have nothing to do with this geopolitical chess game that is being waged. So I think that's very important to start with. Before we get into TYT's insane coverage of this, which is further ratcheting up the calls for world war. And it's actually funny because there's a Fox News segment that aired yesterday that's strikingly similar to the coverage being doled out at TYT that I want to play right after, so you guys can see just how similar TYT is sounding these days to Fox fucking News. Anyway, what were you going to say, Zach?
Oh, I'm just going to jump in here really quickly and say I 100% agree with what you just said. And yeah, it's important to make that clear distinction that just because you're anti-war and I'll come out here and, pull my hair out and say the United States should be doing like absolutely nothing. I don't want to send in weapons over there. I don't want to profiteering off of this destruction. I don't want to sending troops to Germany. I don't want to, ratcheting up our influence in NATO. I don't want any of that. I actually want us to abolish NATO. I want no more countries in NATO. I want new, diplomacy that, addresses Russia's concerns in the area and also Ukrainian concerns in the area. I want all of those things, but I just understand the incompetency of my own fucking government is so severe and so intense that it's impossible for me to advocate for us to go over there and do anything. So here, as an American citizen, one of the things that we constantly fucking advocate for is that our military doesn't get involved. But yeah, I don't want that to get misconstrued as like somehow we're simping for Russia. Like, no.
Yeah, let's take a look at this video from TYT. Biden reacts to Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And if you're just tuning into the show, guys, make sure to leave a like. Drop a like really helps us beat that algorithm. But yeah, let's take a look at this and see exactly what tone they were striking over at the Young Turks. I thought this was pretty interesting for obvious reasons, but let's take a listen and we can react.
Come on.
By the way, this is also not new. Part of the reason that we didn't go into World War II quicker as millions of people were being murdered was because a lot of our bankers had deals with the Germans. So they didn't want to burn their Nazi allies. That's literal, that's historic, you can read up about it, okay? So American bankers said, whoa, I'm gonna lose money if you go into Germany. Let a couple more million people die because I don't want to lose any money. And from recent history, last example, in 2018, we actually did go after a Russian oligarch. Turns out he had cornered the aluminum market. And so when we put sanctions on him, aluminum prices spiked all across the world. And when they did, they put the fear of God into Western markets and Western politicians. They're like, whoa, we got to be really careful about sanctioning Russian oligarchs because it could affect us 0.1%, and we can't have it. So we learned all the wrong lessons from that, and the Russians and Vladimir Putin specifically learned a lesson. Oh, these guys can be pushed around. And that's what he's doing right now. Thanks for watching the Young.
But yeah, basically he compares the situation to World War II and says because of the corporate influences that were preventing us from, sanctioning Hitler, getting involved in World War II in a quicker, more dramatic way, thousands of lives were lost. And so basically he's making a direct comparison here between World War II, Hitler's Nazi Germany, and what's going on currently with Putin and Russia invading Ukraine. And as we just laid out, guys, we're no sympathizers of Putin or the Russian government. We have in no uncertain terms condemned Putin's, invasion of Ukraine. Obviously, like I said, it's only going to result in the death and harm to innocent civilians, which is something that is unacceptable no matter the, excuses given. That being said, I take real issue with this comparison of World War II. This is not the same kind of situation that is happening, that happened in the 1930s involving World War II. It's simply not the same, guys. For one, Putin, to our knowledge, is not rounding up and exterminating whole ethnicities of people. Any, ethnicity that's not completely white, Aryan race, that's not happening. So right off the bat, it's not exactly apt or fair comparison. Again, not to defend Putin, but the guy's not trying to create like a master Aryan race, exterminating everyone in his path. Second of all, yes, it definitely seems like Putin has these, visions of trying to recreate the USSR, right? The Russian Empire. That being said, that's all within his geological or geographic sphere. It does not appear that he has goals of world domination. He wants control of his own region. He wants regional hegemony, which we currently have. But there's no evidence that this guy wants to take over the world. There's no evidence that he has goals of world domination. So to even bring up Hitler, to even bring up World War II and say, well, we should, take a more aggressive stance as if this is a Hitlerian situation. Basically what you're advocating for there is World War III. That's straight up what you're advocating for. And in the nuclear age, I'll give you a hint, that doesn't fucking end well. Not just for Russia, but for all of us. That means nuclear annihilation. That's not something that I want to fuck around with. That's not a door I want to open. No matter how much I feel for the people of Ukraine, which I do, 100% solidarity with the people of Ukraine. That being said, this simply is not worth a world war over. It's just not.
You can not compare, essentially what Vladimir Putin is trying to reestablish is back when, the USSR was a superpower in, the Eurasian part of the globe, right? So you would have essentially, I would imagine, the ambition is to have fucking, United States, Russia, China as like the three bearers of the world that's divided up. It's kind of hard to radically oppose that and say we're going to be prepared to go to World War III over that when we already have our chunk of the globe. Like, that's all I'm saying, right? So from a geopolitical positioning standpoint, like Russia's basically just trying to do what we already do, and I don't think anybody would think that it was fair for China to start nuking the United States because of our like fucking imperialist ambitions, which are a demonstrable far more than Russia's imperialist. Like I said, we bombed Somalia today. How many people saw any fucking reporting about that unless you're on left Twitter? And it was like, no reporting about the bombing in Somalia, but all the reporting about what's going on in Kiev, right? Well, guess who's doing the bombing and who's being bombed in each of those kinds of situations. It goes back to that old Chomsky point about worthy and unworthy victims, right? The people of Ukraine are worthy victims. The people of Somalia are unworthy victims. The people of Libya are unworthy victims. The people of Yemen are unworthy victims, right? That's why when we destroy those countries, with the help of NATO, no less, or just a war profiteer with the help of Saudi Arabia, another country that is hell-bent on destroying Yemen with our weapons that we don't seem to give a shit about, right? All these kinds of things that just make it massively, massively hypocritical, guys, to come out here and finger wag and talk about how our country stands up to bullies. Our country is a fucking bully. Putin wants to be a bully too, and we either start World War III or we say, you know what, that's your block, guy. We've got our block. You know what I mean? It's like mafia mentality, unfortunately, and that's not a final world stage that I want to inhabit. but it's also, I mean, it is what it is, you know?